Hey, welcome. So I thought I'd talk more about the train tunnels, and specifically I drew this line through here. These are images from the 1600s that just show these estates that were magnificent, the gardens and things that were built up by that time far surpass much of what we find today out in the countryside. This is just a country property, probably. It's probably somebody of some note, but if you look to the left of the line, you see an archway that's buried deep. Right in the middle of the page if you go left, but a little bit below halfway down the page, you see that archway that's really low in the ground. It's kind of dug out. It's curious. I find it curious. And then, of course, the straight line going through, that's a path, that's a tunnel, that's a portal through the mountain. Here's another one. This is Roman leftovers that were excavated and being used at the time, at the end of the Middle Ages, supposedly right around the beginning of the Renaissance. And it looks like a tunnel going through. Latium. They spoke Latin. Latium vitus or utis, or I don't know. Is it a U or a V? I don't know. It's anybody's guess. Novum, Novum, but that's VV. Okay. But you see this mountain in the bottom left inset, and there's a train tunnel going through, because they had that. Actually, 4 of them in this melted castle with the pocket of survival to the right, and then on the top. Of course, yes, they could have built that on top of this natural formation, but we know better than that. We know it's not simply a natural formation. It is antediluvian, or it survived some kind of cataclysm, either replaced by mineralized sediment that sloughed down in some areas but preserved the structure perfectly, or it could be just pockets of survival and the rest was replaced with mineralized sediment from the flood that kind of smoothed off or wore down from the weather, or it could be just straight up melted, or there could be another mechanism similar to melting of which we know not much about or anything about. Who knows? These archways and tunnels. This, to me, looks like a re-mineralized, like petrified wood, but it was a metal lid, or like a bank vault door or something of that nature. Could have been a wheel, but whatever it was, it's not a single piece of stone that was carved out and just left somewhere. No way. The orangey kind of, it's probably iron, it's probably some kind of metal that was turned to stone. Could be a Titan's shield or a giant's shield, who knows? But judging by it looks like a hubcap or like a wheel or some kind of piece of machinery. Bricks, 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 bricks out the wazoo. But here's another one of those tunnels. I thought this was interesting. Like, what is this? These shields are pretty large. Are those for normal-sized men? What is this? A pot to piss in? Or, well, the metal work around the edges seems to me to be some kind of an electrical function. It's not just decorative. I don't think so. Could have been a light if you electrified it, and but I don't know. I'm speculating. Of course, that's all I can do at this point, but just get better and better at it the more we do it. Look at the tunnels in the ground. They're not even like the way they're angled. It's like, you want to explain that? You want to explain that? Yeah. Material handling depot from the antediluvian times. I mean, think, this is from the 1600s. They were ruins then. Tunnels in the hillsides. Yeah, like they couldn't just go over. No, they drain out. Those are waterway tunnels. For their aqueducts, maybe. Hollowed out mountains all the way back then. Of course, it made sense to do that, you know, wastewater or storm drains, storm water, just like today. Hollowed out mountains, because they're melted buildings. I think they were melted buildings, possibly. And this is from Curious Life channel. He found these underground dark matter laboratories worldwide, and the names of them. Cogent. I have a song named Lux, and I did a song named, or I performed the song Edelweiss. It's kind of weird. I did a video about Picasso. Just like, wow. Coincidence? This one over near China, Pandax, kind of makes me think of something else that came out of China, of which I will not speak. Techniques: cryogenic, solid scintillator, and noble liquids. They're not peasant liquids. Yeah, it makes sense for a train tunnel to have this castle-like, cathedral-like structure. Yeah. It's not just a pocket of survival from a massive, amazing castle that just was mostly melted and turned into this mountainside. No. Now in, I think it's Guilin, Guoling, Guilin, China. The rest of the video is going to cover mostly this, because this area I found to be fascinating. Supposedly in the 1970s, these guys just dug this out. Okay. And again, Curious Life channel covered this a little bit. He just found it and thought it was interesting about the possibility that the tunnels were kind of already there, and I agree. But I think it was an entire building. It's just easy to kind of clear out where naturally there would be a floor if it wasn't pancaked down too much, right? Because I really do think it's just like stacked up bricks or something. I don't know where all these bricks came from. I mean, it's trillions of them. But it's like, where does the masonry begin and end? It's one of these things you can look at. It's used as a road, but you can compare it to other places like in Tajikistan. They have these tunnels. It's always the same. They just kind of excavate what's already there. The natural archways can be found in the rock. You can find windows, doorways, and pipes, because you have to have pipes for different reasons of moving air, water, maybe electrical, maybe just material handling systems as well, delivery systems. And these strips or pipes or tubes that go in different directions can oftentimes be found as like a cross section going crossways along the tunnels, and we'll look for those as we go along. What amazes me is how in these in caves as well, the ceilings are so flat. And some of these were probably built afterwards, but honestly, where did the bricks come from? Do you think that they made them way up on the mountain? I don't think so. Did they haul them up there? I don't think so. It looks like just bricks everywhere. I mean, if you look in the top left where I wrote that, you can see it starts to look more and more brick-like, these layers. They fuse into each other, and you can see the round shapes towards the middle of the screen where maybe some pipes were going across, and windows in the middle as well. Now this really shows it. So they have this spillway going down, but where are the blocks and bricks beginning and ending in some of these cases? And I find it interesting, the types of blocks, the types of masonry, and how it's kind of a smooth transition. Sometimes they start using concrete, sometimes they use wood, sometimes they use metal. It's very often bricks. I would wear a hard hat walking around there. They seem uninterested with us. This area up here Looks like bricks. Some of them definitely. And like I said about the tubes or pipes going crossways, you can see on the bottom right, a little bit up, you can see those round shapes. Also in the middle right side, going up, there's one after the other. So weather-worn blocks, bricks, masonry. Look out, transitions up, transitions across. There's no clearly defined, like where it snaps over. There's no line that clearly shows where it snaps over from natural formations to recently done masonry. And you zoom back a little bit, and it becomes even more obvious to me that they have stairs that survived. It's stairs to nowhere. Who made it and when? It doesn't, again, it looks like it's part of the so-called natural formation, which I think is not natural. It's clearly looking melted. Melted masonry. And you go up the hillside. I've been to places like this. They're all over the world. I've been to these places, and you go around the hillside, the surrounding area, and you see bricks, you see blocks, you see what looks like masonry. It's like, why did they do that on this random hillside over here, this whole wall of like masonry and bricks? Well, people just shrug their shoulders and say, well, somebody must have just done it to prevent erosion at some point in the past. Yeah, who, when, what? It just goes on and on like that. It's a pocket of survival. Very clearly. You can see how some of the stairs kind of fell to the side and remained there, and that wasn't done by anybody. After, like in this setting, I think it was a fantastic castle type structure at some point. I wonder too how big those steps are. Be interesting to see. Now this was really, really difficult to get this image. I found this area where there were no images, and you know how China is about stuff. And I wondered, well, what is in this area? And I had to search and search and search and search. I probably spent a good half hour, 45 minutes looking. And I finally came upon this image of what was clearly fogged out and grayed out. You'll see some examples of it, of how they do that, like in Google Earth, and how they fog it out and cloud it out and blur it out. So I'm like, what is there? Because I had this idea for quite a while that on the tops of some of these mountains and these parks and stuff like that, that they have some areas that survived because they're at the top. You know, a lot of times it's at the top of the mountain that something survives. And obviously, yes, some people would build on the highest point, but again, here you don't really see that. They built not on the highest point, but on higher points. And this is a really well preserved part of what I think was an entire huge structure. And it could be that when the earth was created, it was all basically like a garden structure. Like there was nothing like what we think of rock now, just natural formations. There hadn't been a cataclysm yet. And so some of that stuff that survived, it's hard to find, but here it is. You can see it's very old, very overgrown. And the same color as the landscape. It's something that just survived the cataclysm, and people are kept away. There is a newer building kind of in the background. I would think it would be a newer building where they probably have stationed guards to protect it from the public so that people don't learn the true history. Literally, that's probably exactly it. Where you are allowed to go, even the places like that, you can see the tunnels where this one goes through. There's another one above it and to the right that just hadn't been the sediment hadn't been removed. It was probably very easy to dig out this path. And you go along, you see like windows, doors, pipes, tubes that go perpendicular to the face of the wall that are all just re-mineralized. It's all been pressure set in sediment over thousands of years. Who knows how many thousands of years? Many, maybe. Maybe not so many. Even as a kid, the layers caught my attention. But in the bottom middle, you can see what looks like a door. Go to the right, maybe some windows go up, maybe some kind of pipes going across. And then these flat faces where it's like a vertical wall face that's kind of hanging from the top sometimes. And then they have these big stones that were, I don't know, Titan iPhones or something that have been vitrified or mineralized into like marble or something. And they etch and carve on it, so it's like, oh, well, we did this. Yeah, right. Like you took this big chunk, hauled it up there, and carved out some nonsense on it and put it up there as a monument. To some extent, yeah, but I think it was already up there and mostly shaped the way it is. They probably had to deface it, and then as long as they're defacing it, they etched in some nonsense. We don't want you to know what was really on there. We'll just deface it and put something else, maybe. But you can find some people go off the beaten path and they're hiking. They snap some photos, and those are almost always interesting, like this one you can see at the top. It looks to be the remnants of some kind of tower. Other times they make these things into like lookout points. They're naturally formed. I don't know what all that stuff is dripping down it. But that looks like a chimney. It's a chimney with a concrete cap. It's kind of melted. These mountains are so steep. It wouldn't happen in nature. It was built up vertical like skyscrapers, skyscraper castles. And the ravages of the flood and time and purposeful destruction, defacing, take their toll. In the background, you can see a tower or two. And kind of in the foreground as well. Clearly. To me, it's obvious. If you could take away the vegetation, it'd be much more obvious. It's beautiful. Looks like a castle to me. Stairway going up. It's severely destroyed. It's like Rivendell from the Lord of the Rings series. This is Wang Mang Mountain. Everybody Wang Mang tonight. There's that tower. Looks like a big door. Definitely a old building. Look how flat it is at the base. Maybe a couple towers in the foreground. Or middle ground there. And the water tunnel. Yeah. See, that is something that is a remnant of the flood. Or no, the plumbing. That was, the buildings destroyed by the flood still had good plumbing. Those are the springs and the water tunnels, the aqueducts in some cases. Now, here again, this is so clearly either a chimney or some part of a structure, tower. Huge. These buildings were absolutely massive. Just think if they melted down to this and the flood brought the landscape up with the sediment, how they may have reached to like a kilometer high maybe more miles high. Some of these buildings vertical. I mean straight vertical, some of them. That's not even the highest point, see. It's all layered. It's all these layers, because it's not that it was laid down over such a great expanse of time. It was built that way. Look at the archway at the bottom. That's some kind of a subterranean tunnel, probably, or just a street level tunnel, and quite possibly maybe a skyway of some sort for large machinery or something like that. Maybe a large train. Did the Titans ride on trains? The truth is going to be much stranger than fiction, I guarantee that. But as there's active erosion happening on this, they really can't hide the doorways and the archways, the windows, the cross paths of the tunnels and pipes, tubes, hallways, and such. They have these old concrete roads out in the middle of absolute nowhere. Here, clearly something left over. They wouldn't build that, they wouldn't carve that out of the rock formations here. Maybe I think what they do with the stairs is they take the large steps and then they carve out, every other step they carve half size. This elevator going up, you can see if it's a building, it's going to have that kind of a vertical face in a lot of cases. And natural formations, I don't think they would naturally erode that way or form that way either. So it wouldn't start that way and it wouldn't end up that way. Not after so much time. Here's an example of when they blur something out. Because there are structures and buildings at the top. They just copy and paste over too. It's not even a real picture, I think. Unless those two towers are so similar. It may be, but I think that they just took photos of the landscape and they just copy and paste over what they don't want you to see. Could be that there's naturally a cloud in there, but it doesn't look natural. And the tower that is shown on the right doesn't look natural to me. It definitely looks like somebody used a blur tool of some kind of software. And you go just below the blur and you can see that it does really look like an old structure. Very old. It's just mineralized from sediment from the flood. I mean, that's not a cloud. That's a blur tool. Absolutely. For sure. No doubt. And they are hiding some kind of a man-made structure. It becomes too obvious. They are hiding it. And they just copy and paste, but they don't do that good of a job. I don't think it's... I think it's just... Well, you be the judge. What's going on here? It looks like it's the same thing, but then if you look at the mountain behind it, I guess this one's taken from a higher elevation, maybe? But no, the mountain behind it's completely different. I think it's two towers that are just almost identical. I don't know. It's hard to say sometimes. But they definitely blur it out. Look at that. let's see this again. Watch this. So this is using the 360 view. There you can see a window, a couple windows going across. It looks like it changes over to like some kind of metal, like something straight out of Lord of the Rings there. And they covered up. Sorry about the background noise. I really can't make videos record if I wait for all that to end, because it never ends. I think people do it continually, taking turns to make noise. Like this, clearly, you think there's some Photoshop going on here. Now some of it is this photosphere, like the software they use to kind of blend the multiple images, but I've never seen anything mess up that much. Here's a door or a hallway going across, windows, archways here on the left. So clear. And the angle, you know, because the building kind of collapsed to the right. And you can see the doors and the archways and the windows, the hallways. It's plain as day. Plain as day. Is it weather that covers that up, or is it the blur tool? Clearly we see the blur tool at work. It may not be purposeful, it may be some crappy software, but just so happens right around these man-made structures, look in the middle, that it's got like an obelisk there that hasn't been excavated. One of those obelisks, maybe with a clock at the top or something. Like a clock tower right there. That clearly looks like a building to me with the windows. One of these colonnade type shaped structures. So definitely, clearly a building that's just been filled up with minerals from the flood. There's a good example of the train tunnels going sideways, way up on the side of the mountain. All they have to do is be excavated. The sandstone that fills these tunnels would be easy to remove. And then you just put some bricks up around, and or concrete filling the archways so it doesn't kind of collapse in on you, or you just hide the sandstone, and easy peasy. And you got it done. You can take credit for the tunnels going through the mountain. Just build a bridge right up to them and take credit for it. You look at this structure here, sometimes maybe they remove some of the better preserved things and just set it up in town. Oh, this is a monument. Yeah. Well, you could take this and stick it right on the side of the mountain. It'd probably fit perfectly with some of these forms and shapes on the mountain. Doesn't make sense that they'd build these things. People, there's nobody there. It's just out in the middle of the country. It's just come have a look at this disused palace and read the fake history about what it was used for, war, killing, blah, blah, blah. Whatever's written on the top is removed. This is China. It looks like a European cathedral. It could be in America. It looks like stuff that is here in the Toledo area. It's about the same. The bricks are maybe a little bit more red here. And here's an example of is it concrete? Is it brick? Is it wood? Metal? Or what are they building here? And why? Why here? Well, because it's a pocket of survival, so they have to make it. It's just like the Bastille Bridge in Europe. It's melted. It's like a bridge area, and they just make it seem like they did it. Where does the masonry snap over to natural formations? It's just they're on a big collapsed building. Then they don't even know it. All these people walk around there day after day after day after day. don't even know they're walking on the collapsed old ruins of a castle. It's too huge. It's too big for their minds. Little pockets of survival. People live in it, maybe their whole lives, generation after generation, not even realizing that it was existing far, long, long before they did. Before their ancestors discovered it. Sometimes they build structures on top of structures. It's like a little ant house on top of a real house. Towers. If you get up close to these things, sometimes you can really tell. You can see the doorways, everything I've been talking about. There's a bridge going across the top, like a skyway, hallway, who knows? Roadway, like the movie Metropolis with the roads going across the sky like that. The illumination must have been different back then. Maybe if the moon was a sun, or the sun was brighter, or there were two suns, or I don't know, just spitballing here. The sun reflected more, covered more area, was more diffused and more powerful. Then they wouldn't want direct sunlight. They could exist in a city with roadways and things overhead, not have to worry about not getting enough sunlight. Here's an example of what I was talking about, where they find these towers in the side of a mountain. They just can easily dig them out. They just build a bridge that goes right up to the openings that were already there. That they just dig out this sandy sandstone that's really easy to excavate. And claim that they dug the tunnel out, but they're really just clearing it out. Put up a nice face on it. Take the real face that was on it maybe and put it in the town square. And people drive through it all the time. They don't even know. They don't suspect it. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed this Guoling, China area.